That Thursday night, the richest woman in Oregon stood at my door, rain-soaked and sobbing. She clutched her dead daughter's blanket and asked me the craziest question a billionaire CEO could ask a guy who fixes refrigerators. Will you give me a baby? The moment stretches in memory like taffy pulled too thin. October rain hammering the roof of my rental house in Eugene, the kind that finds every gap in the weather stripping and reminds you that winter's coming, whether you're ready or not. Behind me, the kitchen still smelled like the mac and cheese Ruby and I'd shared for dinner, our Thursday tradition, because routines were the scaffolding that kept our small world from collapsing. My daughter was 8 years old and already understood more about scarcity than any child should. She'd watched me check our bank balance on my phone before answering the door, seen the tightness in my jaw when the screen showed $287 with rent due in 5 days. Ruby had learned to make herself small during those moments, to retreat into homework and pretend she didn't hear her father's quiet cursing. The knock came at 8:30, late enough that it couldn't be good news. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and moved through the narrow hallway past the second-hand furniture that had survived 3 moves and counting. Through the peephole, I saw her and my stomach dropped. Victoria Sinclair, CEO of NextGen Robotics, net worth somewhere north of 400 million, standing on my porch like she'd wandered into the wrong neighborhood and gotten lost. Her face was the color of typing paper. Rain had plastered her dark hair against her skull, and she held a blue and yellow knitted blanket against her chest the way shipwreck survivors clutch driftwood. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, the kind of crying that leaves you hollowed out. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and dying leaves. She looked at me like a drowning person looks at a rope. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, cracked and desperate. I'm sorry, I didn't know where else to go. I can't be alone in that house tonight. The thing was, Victoria Sinclair and I weren't friends. We'd met exactly 3 times, always in the context of me fixing something expensive in her mansion, while she pretended I was invisible. The fact that she was here now, collapsing on my doorstep, meant something had broken in ways I did not know how to repair. I stepped back, pulling the door wider. Come in. Please come in. She crossed the threshold like someone walking through a minefield, each step uncertain. Water dripped from her coat onto the cheap linoleum I'd been meaning to replace for 2 years. She stood in my narrow entryway looking lost, like she'd just realized she had no idea what came next. Ruby appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, curiosity overwhelming the bedtime routine I'd worked so hard to establish. Dad, who's that? A friend, sweetheart. Go back to bed. I'll be up to check on you in a minute. She looked sad. I know, Bug. I'll make sure she's okay. Ruby retreated, but slowly, the way kids do when they sense adult trouble and want to understand it. Her door closed with a soft click that felt like judgment. I guided Victoria toward the living room, my hand hovering near her elbow without quite touching. Sit down. I'll make tea. The kitchen gave me 30 seconds to think while the kettle heated. My hands moved on autopilot, pulling mugs from the cabinet, finding tea bags that had been there since last winter. Through the doorway, I could see Victoria on my second-hand couch, still clutching that blanket, staring at nothing. 6 months ago, I'd gotten a service call to a mansion in West Hills, Portland's neighborhood for people who measured wealth in buildings instead of dollars. The HVAC system had died during a heat wave, and Victoria Sinclair needed it fixed before a board meeting in 2 hours. I'd shown up in my work uniform with my toolkit and found her standing in a kitchen bigger than my entire house, radiating the kind of cold efficiency that made military commanders look soft. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car and checked her watch twice while I explained the problem. I need this working in 2 hours. I have a board meeting. I can do 90 minutes if the parts cooperate. They'd better cooperate. I'd worked fast, sweat dripping down my back in the unair-conditioned mansion, replacing a seized compressor and rewiring the control board. 87 minutes later, the system hummed to life, cold air pouring through vents like a miracle. She'd written the check without looking at the amount, then handed me a business card. You work efficiently. Here's my direct number. If there's an issue, call me. I'd stared at that card for a full minute after driving away, trying to figure out why a billionaire CEO would give her personal contact information to an appliance repairman. Rich people didn't do that. Rich people had assistants and secretaries and layers of insulation between themselves and the working class. 3 months later, she'd called that number. Her home theater system had stopped working. Could I come take a look? I'd brought Ruby because my babysitter had the flu, and I couldn't afford to miss the call. The mansion had felt different that second time, empty in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. Victoria Sinclair moved through rooms like a ghost haunting her own life, and I'd noticed things a service call probably shouldn't have noticed. No family photos on the walls. No personal touches anywhere. Everything sterile and perfect and utterly devoid of warmth. One door stayed locked, and when Ruby wandered too close, Victoria's face had done something complicated, pain flashing across her features before the Ice Queen mask slammed back into place. Ruby had been fascinated by the mansion's scale, running her hands along marble countertops and asking if people actually lived here or if it was a museum. Victoria had watched my daughter with an expression I couldn't decode, something hungry and heartbroken, hiding behind those cold gray eyes. Before we left, Victoria had given Ruby an iPad, some older model she claimed she didn't need anymore. $800 of hardware handed to an 8-year-old like it was a stick of gum. That's too much. I can't accept that. Victoria's voice had gone flat, almost mechanical. I don't need it. The girl will use it better. Ruby had looked at me with pleading eyes, and I'd swallowed my pride because my daughter deserved something nice for once. Thank you. That's very generous. Victoria had already turned away, disappearing back into her enormous empty house. The third meeting came a month ago. Pool heater broken. Could I fit her into my schedule? I'd arrived to find her in the middle of an argument with a man in an expensive suit, his voice carrying across the pool deck, with the confidence of someone who'd never been told to shut up. Robert Callahan, her CFO. He'd looked at me the way people look at something they've stepped in, his lip curling slightly. The repairman's here. Can we speak privately? Victoria hadn't even glanced my way. Mr. Brennan is a professional. He'll work. I'd focused on the pool heater, trying to ignore the argument happening 20 feet away. But sound carries over water, and I'd heard every word. Investors are losing faith. You need to appear more human, more relatable. I run a company, not a popularity contest. A 36-year-old CEO with no family, no children. The board thinks you're a robot. They're questioning your judgment. Then they can question it at the next shareholders meeting. This isn't sustainable, Victoria. You're brilliant, but brilliance isn't enough. People need to see you as human. I'd watched her hands clench into fists, knuckles going white, but her voice stayed level, that terrifying control, never slipping. If that's everything, I have work to do. After Callahan left, Victoria had stood by the pool for 10 minutes, staring into the water like it held answers. I'd finished the repair and packed my tools, and when I'd cleared my throat to let her know I was leaving, she'd startled, like she'd forgotten I existed. She'd written the check without a word, and I'd driven away thinking about loneliness, about how money could insulate you from everything except yourself. Now she sat on my couch looking like all that careful control had finally shattered, and I didn't know what to do with the pieces. I brought the tea and sat in the chair across from her, giving her space. She wrapped her hands around the mug, but didn't drink, just stared into the steam. I'm sorry, this is inappropriate. We barely know each other, and I just showed up at your door like some kind of... Her voice broke. She set the mug down with shaking hands. You don't need to apologize. Whatever's going on, you don't have to face it alone. Something in her face crumpled at those words. Tears spilled over, running down her cheeks in silence. She clutched the blue and yellow blanket tighter. I lost them. My husband, my daughter, 6 years ago. The words fell like stones into still water ripples spreading outward. I knew before she said another word that I was about to hear something that would change everything, that there was no going back once she opened this door. There was an accident, private jet crash. We were flying home from Disneyland. Emma's birthday trip. She just turned 4. She wanted to see the castle, wanted to meet the princesses. James said we should take her, make it special. Victoria's voice had gone flat, reciting facts she'd repeated so many times they'd lost all texture. The engine failed over the Cascades. We went down in the mountains. James died on impact. Emma held on for 3 days in the ICU, but her injuries were too severe. I'm so sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate. But what else could you say to someone who'd lost everything? I did therapy, grief counseling, all the things you're supposed to do to survive something like that. And I did survive. I got up every morning. I went back to work. I built the company from 20 million to 800 million. I became the most powerful CEO in medical robotics. She finally looked at me, and I saw the truth behind the Ice Queen facade. She was drowning, had been drowning for 6 years, and the only thing keeping her head above water was the weight of all that money and power pressing down from above. But I'm not living Colt. I'm just existing. The house is too big, too quiet. I walk into the kitchen, and I still see her Emma sitting at the counter with her cereal. I make coffee, and I have to remind myself not to make James's cup too. I throw away mail addressed to people who don't exist anymore. Her hands twisted the blanket fingers working the soft yarn. This was Emma's. My mother made it for her when she was born. It's the only thing I kept from her room. Everything else I donated because I couldn't stand to look at it. But this blanket, I couldn't let it go. Today would have been Emma's 10th birthday, if she'd lived. I sat in that mansion by myself and realized I have $400 million and no one to celebrate with. No one who needs me. No one who cares if I come home at night or work until I collapse. I miss being a mother. I miss it so much it feels like it's killing me. Goodnight kisses and scraped knees and bedtime stories. Having someone need me, having a reason to get up in the morning, beyond just existing. The room felt too small, suddenly the air too thin. I knew where this was going, and my stomach was already tightening, my brain already calculating exits. Victoria sat up straighter, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I've been thinking about it for months. Years, maybe. I want to have a baby. I need to be a mother again. I've considered sperm donors, anonymous vials in a fertility clinic, choosing from a catalog of statistics. Height, weight, education, medical history. It's so cold, so empty. I'd be building a child from numbers on a screen. I've thought about adoption, but the waiting lists are years long, and I'm not sure they'd approve a single woman who works 80 hours a week. I've thought about IVF with donor eggs, about surrogacy, about every possible option. But they all feel wrong, impersonal, clinical. When I had Emma, I knew everything about her father. I knew James's laugh, his fears, his dreams. I knew why his nose crinkled when he was thinking hard and how he always left his coffee cup on the left side of the sink. When Emma was born, I saw pieces of him in her, and it made her real in a way I can't explain. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt the weight of what was coming, like a physical thing pressing on my chest. I need someone I trust, someone who's proven they know how to be a father, someone whose character I can see, not just read about in a file. I've watched you with Ruby Colt 3 times now. The patience you show her, the way you listen like what she's saying actually matters, the way you protect her without suffocating her. You're exactly the kind of person I want my child to have in their DNA. The words hung between us like smoke. My mouth had gone completely dry. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to be my boyfriend or my partner or anything romantic. I'm just asking for this one thing. If you want to be involved in the child's life, wonderful. If you don't, I understand completely. I can do this alone. I have the resources, the stability. I just need someone to help me create this life. She pulled an envelope from her coat pocket, hands shaking. I've already spoken to lawyers. We'd draw up an agreement protecting both of us. You'd have no financial obligation unless you chose to contribute. I'd be the primary parent with full custody, everything legal and clear. Please, Colt, I know this is insane. I know I'm asking for something people don't just ask for. But I don't have anyone else. I don't have family. I don't have close friends. I have you, and you've been kind to me, and I thought maybe you'd consider no. The word came out harder than I'd intended, sharp as broken glass. Victoria's face went blank, that CEO mask, sliding back into place, but not before I saw the hope die in her eyes. I stood up, needing distance. Ms. Sinclair, I understand you're suffering. I can't imagine losing what you lost. But this is insane. I have Ruby. Every decision I make, every choice, it has to be about what's best for my daughter. I can't create a child, even if I'm not raising it, when it could affect her stability, when it could complicate her life in ways I can't predict or control. I can't risk the life we've built. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't help you. Victoria stood still, clutching Emma's blanket. That careful control was back at her voice, professionally polite. I understand. I shouldn't have asked. I should go. The door closed behind her and I was left standing in my living room, staring at 2 mugs of tea that no one had touched. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. Ruby appeared on the stairs. Is she okay? I don't know, Bug. I hope so. What did she want? Help with something I can't give her. You should have helped her, Dad. She looked really sad. I pulled Ruby into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups need help that other grown-ups can't give. It's complicated. After Ruby went back to bed, I stood at the kitchen sink washing the dishes we'd left from dinner. My reflection in the window looked older than 31, worn down by 5 years of single parenting and 60-hour work weeks, and the constant low-grade terror of not being enough. Victoria Sinclair could buy anything. Sperm donors, surrogates, adoption agencies. She had $400 million and connections that could move mountains. But she'd come to my house, to my tiny rental in the poor part of town, and asked me specifically. Not because I was convenient, because she'd watched me with my daughter and decided I was worth knowing, worth trusting with her most desperate hope. And I'd said no. I'd called her insane and sent her back into that big empty mansion alone. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer the roof, and thought about loneliness, about how money could buy you isolation more effectively than anything else, about how Victoria Sinclair had everything except the one thing that mattered. By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd made the right choice. Protecting Ruby meant saying no to complications no matter how heartbreaking the request. But the image of Victoria's face wouldn't leave me alone. That desperate hope dying in her eyes when I'd refused. The way she'd clutched her dead daughter's blanket like it was the last solid thing in a world gone liquid. Work Friday was a disaster. I nearly electrocuted myself rewiring a dishwasher because I couldn't focus. My boss, Tom, pulled me aside after I ordered the wrong compressor for a refrigerator, repair a $400 mistake we couldn't afford. You look like hell, Wade. Woman trouble, just tired, bullshit. You've been doing this job 4 years, never made a mistake like this. Whatever's going on, figure it out. You're no good to me like this. I spent my lunch break in my truck Googling Victoria Sinclair on my phone. The Forbes profile came up first, all sharp angles and Ice Queen efficiency. Tech's youngest female robotics CEO. Net worth $400 million and climbing. Revolutionary medical robotics that had saved thousands of lives. Then I found the old articles buried under years of corporate success stories. Seattle Times 6 years ago. Tragedy strikes tech couple, private jet crash. Claims 2 lives. James Sinclair, 35. Emma Sinclair, 4. Survived by wife Victoria Sinclair, 30. The details made my chest hurt. They'd been flying home from Disneyland. Emma's 4th birthday trip. The engine had failed over the Cascades. James died on impact. Emma survived long enough to reach the hospital but passed away 3 days later from her injuries. I found the birthday detail in a follow-up article that family and friends gathered yesterday to remember Emma Sinclair, who would have turned 5 next month. Her mother, Victoria Sinclair, was not present at the memorial service. The crash had happened the day after Emma's birthday. They'd celebrated with princesses and castle tours, and then the next day, her father was dead, and she was dying in an ICU with tubes and machines keeping her body functioning while her brain slowly shut down. Victoria had lived with that for 6 years. The guilt of surviving, the what-ifs that must eat at her every single day. If they'd taken a commercial flight, if they'd stayed one more day, if she'd been a different kind of mother who didn't need private jets and extravagant birthday trips. I thought about Ruby, about what my life would be like if she'd been taken from me. If some random mechanical failure had stolen my daughter and left me with nothing but an empty house and money that couldn't buy her back, I'd probably lose my mind too. I'd probably do anything, ask anyone for a chance to be a father again. That night, after putting Ruby to bed, I called my sister Harper. She lived in Seattle now, 2.5 hours up I-5, married to a high school teacher, and living the stable life I'd once thought I wanted. Harper had practically raised me after our parents died in a car accident when I was 16. She'd been 19 working 2 jobs and trying to keep us both afloat. She'd taught me how to be an adult through sheer force of example, and even now at 35, she was the person I called when life got too complicated to handle alone. I told her everything. Victoria showing up at my door, the request, my refusal, the guilt eating at me. Harper listened without interrupting, which was one of her strengths. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment. That's heavy, Colt. Really heavy. I know. It's insane, right? I was right to say no. Were you? The question hit harder than any judgment would have. What's that supposed to mean? It means I don't know if you said no because it was the wrong thing to do or because you were scared. Of course I'm scared. This is creating a human life with someone I barely know. Do you barely know her? You've been to her house 3 times. You've seen how she lives. You watched her with Ruby. You've seen her when she thinks no one's looking. That's more than a lot of people know about each other before they get married and have kids. That's different, is it? Or is it just unconventional? Ruby has to come first. Everything I do has to be about protecting her. I know that. And you're an amazing father, but Colt, when's the last time you did something for yourself? When's the last time you took a risk that wasn't just about surviving another month? I ran a hand through my hair, suddenly exhausted. I don't have the luxury of taking risks. I have $287 in my bank account and rent due in 4 days. My truck needs new brakes I can't afford. Ruby's school needs money for a field trip I had to say no to. I'm one emergency away from complete financial collapse. And you think that's going to change by playing it safe? By turning down every opportunity because it might be complicated? This isn't an opportunity, Harper. This is a billionaire asking me to father her child because she's too grief-stricken to pursue normal options. Or it's a woman who's desperate and alone and sees something in you worth trusting. Have you considered that maybe this could be good for both of you? How could this possibly be good? Because maybe Ruby needs to see her dad do something brave. Needs to see that it's okay to help people even when it's scary. Needs to understand that family can look different than the nuclear model and still be real. And maybe you need to learn that taking chances doesn't always end in disaster, that vulnerability isn't the same as weakness, that you deserve good things too, Colt. Not just your daughter, you. I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. The house creaked and settled around me, old wood expanding and contracting. Through the window, I could see the street light throwing shadows across our tiny yard, illuminating the swing set I'd assembled from Goodwill parts. Saturday morning, I took Ruby to the park like we did every weekend weather permitted. She ran for the swings immediately, her laugh carrying across the playground, pure and unself-conscious in a way that made my chest ache. A woman sat on a bench nearby, clearly pregnant, one hand on her belly, as she watched her older daughter climb the jungle gym. Her husband stood nearby ready to catch if the girl slipped. They looked happy, tired but happy. I thought about Victoria in that enormous mansion by herself. No husband to share the small moments, no daughter to watch grow, just money and success in an emptiness that no amount of either could fill. Ruby ran back to me, breathing hard. Dad, there's this girl over there who says her dad is a doctor and they have a pool. Can we get a pool? Pools are expensive, Bug. Our house doesn't have room anyway. Miss Tori has a pool. We saw it when you fixed it. Remember, I remembered. I remembered Victoria standing by that pool alone, staring into the water like she might find answers in the chlorinated depths. Dad, why did that lady come to our house, the sad one? She needed help with something. Did you help her? No, I couldn't. Ruby looked at me with those serious 8-year-old eyes that saw too much. Grandma Grace used to say that when someone needs help and you can help them, you should, even if it's hard. Our mother had said that over and over until it became part of our family mythology. Grace Brennan, who'd worked as a nurse for 30 years and died too young in a car accident that shouldn't have happened. She'd believed in showing up for people, in doing the hard thing because it was right. Maybe you should help her dad. She looked really sad. Sunday morning, I found myself driving to Portland without really deciding to go. The truck's engine rattled on the highway, promising expensive repairs I couldn't afford. Rain had cleared overnight, leaving everything washed clean and sharp in the late autumn light. The gates to Victoria's mansion stood closed, imposing. I pressed the intercom button and waited, suddenly uncertain what I was doing here. No answer. I pressed again. The gates swung open silently. I drove up the winding driveway past manicured gardens and fountains that probably cost more than my annual salary. The mansion loomed ahead, all sharp, modern angles and floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria stood in the doorway. She looked worse than Thursday, if that was possible. Dark circles under her eyes like bruises. Hair pulled back in a careless ponytail. She wore jeans and an old sweatshirt, the casual clothes somehow making her look more vulnerable than her CEO armor ever had. Colt, why are you here? I need to talk to you. She stepped back, letting me into a foyer that could have held my entire house. We walked to the living room in silence, our footsteps echoing on marble floors. I'd been here before, but it felt different now knowing what I knew. Every perfect surface, every expensive piece of art, all of it screaming loneliness. We sat across from each other, the same positions as Thursday night but reversed. Her mansion instead of mine, her looking lost instead of me. I did research. I read about the accident. Her face went carefully blank, that protective shell sliding into place. So you know everything. The day after Emma's birthday, flying home from Disneyland. Victoria's hands clenched into fists on her lap. She didn't say anything, didn't need to. The grief was written in every line of her body. That's not your fault. Her laugh came out bitter and sharp. You can't know that, I can. Because mechanical failures aren't choices. They're random. They're case. If you'd taken a commercial flight, maybe something else would have gone wrong. Maybe the timing would have been different and something worse would have happened. You can't logic your way through tragedy by finding someone to blame. I blame myself anyway. Every day. If I hadn't insisted on the private jet, if I'd been a better mother, if James hadn't felt like he needed to give Emma these huge experiences, to make up for me always working. If, it never stops. I leaned forward, needing her to hear this. You lost everything, your husband, your daughter, your whole life, and you survived it anyway. That takes strength most people don't have. Surviving isn't living. You said that yourself Thursday night. Remember, I'm just existing, going through motions, building companies and making money, and none of it means anything because I have no one to share it with. Why me? I need to understand that. Really understand. You could have anyone. Anonymous donors, famous sperm banks men who'd be honored to be chosen by Victoria Sinclair. Why the guy who fixes your air conditioning? She was quiet for a long time, choosing her words carefully. Because I've watched you, Colt. 3 times you came to my house, and I paid attention to things I shouldn't have noticed. The first time you worked efficiently, but you weren't intimidated by the wealth. You didn't act like you were less than me just because I had money. That's rare. The second time Ruby was with you, I watched how you were with her. Patient but not permissive. Present but not hovering. You listened to her like what she said mattered, even when she was just babbling about her favorite colors. That's not something you can fake. Either you're a good father or you're not, and you are. The third time you heard Robert insult you, call you the repairman like it was something dirty. You heard it, I know you did, but you didn't react. You just kept working professional and dignified. You have self-respect, Colt, real self-respect that doesn't depend on what anyone else thinks of you. That's what I want my child to inherit, not money or connections or Ivy League education. I can provide all that myself. I want them to have character, integrity, the ability to work hard without complaint, the dignity you show up with every single day. Her words hit me harder than I expected, finding places I didn't know were hungry for recognition. But practicality pushed back immediately. This is going to be complicated. You understand that. You're bored when they find out their CEO is pregnant by an appliance repairman. The media, the scandal, I've thought about all of it. And yes, it could damage my career. Robert would love to use it against me. The board might lose confidence. Stock could take a hit. But Colt, I'm 36 years old. My biological clock isn't just ticking, it's an air horn. If I don't do this now, I never will. I can make more money. I can rebuild a career. But I can't buy time. And I'm tired of living like this, half dead in a mansion full of things that don't matter. What exactly would this look like? Walk me through your vision. She pulled out papers, actual documents she'd already had drafted. The attorney's name at the top told me she'd been serious about this long before Thursday night. Legal agreement through a family law attorney. You have no financial obligation whatsoever unless you choose to contribute. I'm the primary parent with full custody. You can be involved at whatever level you're comfortable with, from uncle figure to active co-parent. Medical history shared and kept updated. Annual check-ins to reassess the arrangement. Everything documented and protected for both of us. I'll cover all legal fees, all medical costs, everything. You walk away owing me nothing. And if you want to be in this child's life, I welcome that. If you want distance, I respect that. This is about giving me the chance to be a mother again. What happens after that, we figure out together. My biggest concern is Ruby. I looked Victoria in the eye. She's everything to me. If I do this, it can't threaten her stability. Can't make her feel replaced or less important. She has to come first and always. Victoria's face softened, something genuine breaking through. I would never want Ruby to feel that way. She's an amazing kid, Colt. She deserves to feel secure and loved. If anything, I hope Ruby could be part of this. That she could have a relationship with her half-sibling if that's something you both want. But only on your terms, only when and if it feels right. I stood up needing to move. The living room felt too big, too empty. Through the windows, I could see Portland, stretched out below the city, where dreams were built on code and venture capital. My world was an hour south in a rental house with peeling paint, and the distance between felt unbridgeable. I've been building walls around my life for 5 years. No risks, no complications, just survival. Keep Ruby safe. Pay the bills. Don't rock the boat. That's been my entire existence. I turned to face Victoria. But my sister asked me something that I can't stop thinking about. She asked if I'm protecting Ruby or if I'm teaching her to be afraid of life. Teaching her that playing it safe is better than being brave. And maybe she's right. Maybe Ruby needs to see her dad do something that scares him. Needs to learn that family can look different than the picture books show and still be real. Needs to understand that helping people sometimes means taking chances. Victoria stood slowly, hope and fear warring on her face. What are you saying? I'm saying, yes, I'll help you. God help me, I'll help you. Her face crumpled. She pressed her hands to her mouth and tears spilled over her whole body, shaking. I stood there awkward and uncertain until she closed the distance and hugged me, desperate and grateful and completely breaking apart. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. I held her carefully, feeling how fragile she was under all that CEO armor. This doesn't mean I'm not terrified. This doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. But I'm tired of letting fear make every decision. Tired of surviving when I could be living. We figure this out together. We do it right, protect everyone involved, especially Ruby. We build something good from something impossible. Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. Her smile was tentative, real, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. Together. I like that word. The following week unfolded in a blur of legal meetings and medical consultations that made my head spin. Patricia Reeves, the attorney Victoria had hired, specialized in alternative family arrangements. Her office in downtown Portland smelled like expensive coffee and leather briefcases, the kind of place where people solve problems with money and paperwork. Patricia laid out 47 pages of agreements covering every scenario I'd imagined and dozens I hadn't. What if Victoria met someone who wanted to adopt the child? What if I developed a relationship with the kid and then Victoria moved across the country? What if there were medical issues requiring both parents' consent? The documents made it real in a way the conversation hadn't. This wasn't abstract anymore. This was creating a human being who would exist in the world with needs and rights and a future I couldn't predict. Patricia pushed a page across the desk. You'll need your own attorney, independent representation to make sure your interests are protected. Victoria spoke before I could. I'll cover the cost. You need someone who works for you, not me. My pride bristled immediately. I don't need you to pay for Colt. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. Legal fees for something this complex will run $15,000 or more. I'm asking you for something enormous. The least I can do is make sure you're properly represented. I swallowed hard and nodded. This was going to be a running theme, I realized. Her money-solving problems I couldn't afford to solve myself, learning to accept help without feeling like I was being bought. The medical consultation came 2 days later at a fertility clinic that looked more like a spa than a doctor's office. Dr. Sarah Kim walked us through options with the kind of calm efficiency that suggested she'd seen every possible family configuration and no longer judged. Home insemination is cheapest, but has the lowest success rate, around 10 to 15% per cycle. IUI intrauterine insemination is more clinical, but increases odds to around 20%. IVF is most expensive and invasive, but offers the highest success rate at 40% or better. Victoria chose IUI without hesitation. Cost-effective but professional. Better odds than home method, but not as intense as IVF. Dr. Kim had us both do comprehensive screening. Blood work, genetic testing, full medical histories. I sat in a clinical room answering questions about my family's health, trying not to think about the fact that any genetic issues I carried would be passed to a child I wouldn't raise. The results came back clear for both of us. No red flags, no concerns. We were medically compatible for this insane thing we were about to attempt. My last evening in Eugene, before everything changed, I sat in my truck in the driveway and called Victoria. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Colt, is everything okay? I just needed to say something before we really do this, before we can't take it back." "Okay, I'm listening. This is significant, life-changing. If you change your mind, if you wake up tomorrow and realize this is a mistake, I'll understand. No judgment, no hard feelings." Her voice came back strong and certain. "I'm not changing my mind. Are you?" I looked at my house, small and shabby and full of love. Through the window, I could see Ruby at the kitchen table, probably finishing homework. My entire world contained in that modest space. "No, I'm not changing my mind. We're doing this. We're doing it right. And we figure it out together. Together." Victoria's voice held something that might have been a smile. I like that word more every time you say it. We hung up and I sat in the darkening evening watching the sky fade from gold to purple to black. The streetlight kicked on, throwing my shadow across the dashboard. The man looking back at me in the rearview mirror was scared out of his mind, but alive in a way he hadn't been in 5 years. I'd just agreed to father a child with a billionaire I barely knew. Either I'd made the bravest choice of my life or the biggest mistake. Only time would tell which. But for the first time since Jessica had walked out, leaving me alone with a 3-year-old and a pile of unpaid bills, I felt like I was actually living instead of just surviving. And maybe that was worth whatever came next. January came with freezing rain that turned Eugene's streets into skating rinks. The fertility clinic in Portland felt clinical and sterile, all white walls and hushed voices. Victoria sat in the examination room wearing a hospital gown, her legs in stirrups, while Dr. Kim prepared the insemination procedure. I'd provided my sample in a bathroom down the hall 30 minutes earlier, the most awkward medical experience of my life. This whole process felt wrong. Not morally wrong, just profoundly unnatural. Creating life through syringes and petri dishes and careful timing based on ovulation charts. Victoria's face stayed blank throughout her CEO mask, firmly in place, but I saw her hands gripping the exam table, edge hard enough to turn her knuckles white. The procedure took 15 minutes. Dr. Kim worked efficiently, explaining each step in calm medical terminology that made everything sound routine. When it finished, Victoria had to lie still for 20 minutes while I sat in a chair pretending to read magazines about parenting and home decoration. "You okay?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. "Fine, just processing." Her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling tiles. "This is what I wanted, what we agreed to. But lying here knowing your cells are inside me, trying to make a person, it feels surreal." The 2-week wait began. Dr. Kim warned us most couples didn't succeed on the first attempt. Bodies were complicated. Conception required perfect timing, healthy eggs, viable sperm, and a dozen other factors beyond anyone's control. Expect to try multiple times. Victoria texted me daily updates during those 14 days. Day 3, no symptoms. Day 7, possible cramping, but might be imagining it. Day 10, trying not to hope too much. Day 14, took the test this morning. Her next message was a photo. Single pink line. Negative. Not this time. Doctor said it usually takes a few tries. We keep going. I stared at my phone screen trying to identify what I felt. Relief, disappointment. Both tangled together in my chest until I couldn't separate them. Part of me had hoped it would work immediately, get this scary leap over with. Another part was grateful for the reprieve, more time before everything changed irrevocably. February brought the second attempt. Same clinic, same procedure, more tension. Victoria seemed distracted throughout, checking her phone between medical steps. Board meeting tomorrow about Q4 results. Investors are nervous about the robotics market. Maybe we should wait until things calm down at work. Stress affects fertility. Her response came sharp as a knife blade. "I don't have time to wait, Colt. Every month matters when you're a 36 and your eggs are aging." We keep trying. The conversation died there. 2 weeks later, another negative test. Victoria didn't call this time, just sent a two-word text, no luck. I tried calling her. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. When she finally called back 3 days later, her voice sounded hollow. Why isn't it working? We did everything right. Medical screening was perfect. Timing was optimal. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. 2 months isn't long in fertility terms. Bodies don't follow spreadsheets and project timelines. We just keep trying, easy for you to say. You're not the one running out of time. March arrived with the third attempt in significantly higher tension. Victoria snapped at the nurse who took too long finding a vein for blood work. In the examination room, she lay rigid, her jaw clenched so tight I worried about her teeth. Maybe stress is the issue. Your body knows you're wound too tight. Taking a month off might actually improve chances. Her eyes flashed. Don't tell me to relax. Do you have any idea how many times people have said that to me? Just relax and it'll happen. Like my anxiety is the problem, not my age or my empty uterus, or the fact that I've already lost one child and I'm terrified of never having another. I stood my ground. I'm not saying relax as some dismissive platitude. I'm saying your body responds to stress hormones. Cortisol affects ovulation. That's medical fact, not me being insensitive. We didn't speak for 3 days after that. When the negative test result came, Victoria's text was brief and cold. Strike 3. Trying again next month. By April, I was exhausted from the emotional whiplash. Ruby had started asking questions about why I drove to Portland so often, why I seemed distracted all the time. The lies were piling up and I hated it. Just helping Miss Tori with some ongoing project, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. The fourth attempt felt different from the moment I walked into the clinic. Victoria waited in the lobby and something about her expression had changed. Less brittle, more centered. She'd pulled her hair back in a simple ponytail and wore jeans instead of her usual severe professional attire. You look different, calmer. I fired my assistant yesterday, the one who's been with me 4 years. She kept scheduling calls during my fertility windows, kept pushing back appointments. I realized she was doing it because Robert told her to. He's trying to sabotage this. Why would your CFO care if you get pregnant because he wants my job? A scandal about the CEO having a baby with a working-class repairman? That's ammunition. But I'm done letting him control my life. I'm done letting anyone control it. The procedure went smoothly. During the 2-week wait, Victoria actually seemed lighter. She texted less frequently, but the messages felt more genuine. Taking a long bath instead of working past midnight. Watched a comedy special and actually laughed. Ate ice cream for dinner because I felt like it. Day 14 arrived. My phone stayed silent until almost noon. Then it rang Victoria's name on the screen. Can you come to Portland tonight? I need to show you something. My pulse jumped. Is it bad news? Just tell me now. Just come. Please. I arranged for Harper to pick up Ruby from school and drove north with my stomach in knots. Traffic on I-5 crawled every mile, taking forever. By the time I reached the mansion, it was nearly 8 p.m. full dark, the house lit up like a beacon. Victoria answered the door before I could knock. She'd been crying mascara smudged, but she was smiling. Actually smiling real and unguarded in a way I'd never seen. She held up a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. It worked. God, Colt, it worked. I'm pregnant. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the door frame for support, staring at those 2 lines like they might disappear if I blinked. This was real. We'd created a life. A human being was starting to exist because of what we'd done. Are you sure maybe it's a false positive? Should you take another test? I took 4 more. All positive. Called Dr. Kim. She confirmed based on when we did the procedure. I'm pregnant. We're actually pregnant. She laughed then, pure and joyful, and grabbed me in a fierce hug. I found myself laughing too, some knot of tension I'd been carrying for months finally releasing. We'd done it. This impossible thing we'd agreed to do was actually happening. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears and hope and terror all mixed together. I can't believe it worked. I started thinking it never would, that I'd waited too long or my body was too broken. But it worked. So what happens now? The question felt enormous, encompassing months of pregnancy and years of parenthood, and a future I couldn't begin to predict. Now we figure it out. Together. That word again. Together. It had become our anchor point, the thing we returned to whenever the enormity threatened to overwhelm us. 2 weeks later, I sat Ruby down for the conversation I'd been dreading since October. She perched on the couch with her favorite stuffed rabbit, sensing something significant was coming. By the way, I turned off the TV and sat across from her instead of beside her. Bug, I need to explain something important. Remember Miss Tori, the woman who gave you the iPad? Ruby nodded, curious but not alarmed yet. She's going to have a baby. And the thing is that baby is going to be your sister. Your half-sister, technically. Confusion creased her forehead. How can Miss Tori's baby be my sister? You're not married to her. No, we're not. But I'm the baby's father. Miss Tori asked me to help her have a baby because she really wanted to be a mom again. So the baby will have the same dad as you. That makes you sisters. Ruby's face went through several expressions trying to process information that didn't fit any story she'd been told about how families worked. Where will the baby live? With Miss Tori in her house in Portland. But you'll be able to visit whenever you want. You'll be a big sister. The words hung there while Ruby thought. Then her face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. Will you still have time for me? My heart cracked. I pulled her into my lap, immediately holding her tight while she cried against my shoulder. Always, Ruby, always. You are my whole world. Nothing changes that. Having another baby doesn't mean I love you less or that you're less important. You will always be my first priority. But you'll be busy with the baby. Everyone's always busy with babies. And you like Miss Tori. What if you like her and the baby more than me? I tilted her face up and needing her to see the truth in my eyes. That's not how love works, sweetheart. Love doesn't run out. It grows. Having another person to love doesn't mean there's less for you. It means there's more love total. And you, Ruby Brennan, are the most important person in my entire life. Cross my heart. Hope to die. Nothing will ever change that. She clung to me, still crying, but less desperately. Promise, I promise. The next few weeks proved that promise harder to keep than I'd anticipated. Ruby started having nightmares about being abandoned. She became clingy, refusing to let me out of her sight, crying at bedtime. At school, she got into a fight with another girl who'd said something about her dad not wanting her anymore because he was having a new baby. The teacher called me in for a conference. Ruby pushed Megan Thompson off the swings and told her to shut up. That's not like her at all. Is everything okay at home? We're going through some family changes. I'll talk to her. Harper drove down from Seattle that weekend and pulled me aside while Ruby watched cartoons. She needs therapy, Colt. Professional help processing this. You can't fix everything yourself. My pride bristled at the suggestion that I wasn't enough to help my own daughter. But Harper was right. Ruby was struggling beyond what I could handle with reassurance and promises. Dr. Amy Chen specialized in helping children navigate non-traditional family structures. Her office was warm and colorful, filled with games and art supplies. She met with Ruby alone for the first session while I sat in the waiting room pretending to read magazines. When they emerged, Dr. Chen asked to speak with me privately. Ruby's fear is very specific and very common. She's afraid of replacement, of losing her position as your only child. The fact that you're creating this baby with someone who's not her mother complicates it further. She worries you'll form a new family that doesn't include her. How do I fix that? How do I make her feel secure again? You show her repeatedly and consistently. Special time, just the two of you. Weekly dates where she has your complete attention. Let her be involved in the pregnancy if she's comfortable. Make her feel included rather than replaced. And be patient. This is a big adjustment. I started taking Ruby on daddy-daughter dates every Saturday. Just the two of us, no phones, no distractions. Movies, ice cream, bike rides, whatever she wanted. Slowly over weeks, she began to relax again. The nightmares lessened. She stopped clinging quite so desperately. At week 8, Victoria invited both of us to her first ultrasound appointment. Ruby sat beside me in the examination room, wide-eyed and nervous. Victoria lay on the table looking vulnerable in her hospital gown, her hand reaching instinctively for mine. I took it without thinking, our fingers interlacing. Dr. Kim moved the ultrasound wand across Victoria's stomach, and suddenly the screen showed grainy black and white images that resolved into something recognizable. There. That's your baby's heartbeat. A tiny flutter on the screen, fast and strong. Ruby leaned forward, fascinated. That's the baby. That's the baby. About the size of a raspberry right now. Victoria stared at the screen with tears streaming down her face. That's my baby. My daughter's sister. Emma's sister. Her voice caught on the name and I squeezed her hand tighter. After the appointment, Ruby seemed thoughtful. In the parking lot, she looked up at Victoria. Miss Tori, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Are you going to be my stepmom? Since the baby has the same dad as me? Victoria glanced at me, uncertain how to answer. Ruby, your dad and I aren't married. We're friends who are having a baby together. That's a little different. So you're like, my dad's friend, who's also kind of family? Exactly. Family can look lots of different ways. This is just our way. Ruby considered this, then nodded. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. By week 12, Victoria's morning sickness hit with devastating force. She called me one evening, barely able to speak between bouts of vomiting. I can't keep anything down. Lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks. Dr. Kim says it's hyperemesis gravidarum. Severe pregnancy sickness. Can you take time off work? Stay home and rest. I have a board meeting Thursday about investor presentations. I can't miss it. I'm the CEO. Showing weakness now would be disastrous. You're pregnant, not weak. Your body is building a human being. That's not weakness. In my world, it is. In my world, taking time off means giving Robert ammunition to claim I'm not fit to lead. Victoria pushed through the board meeting looking gray and exhausted. I know because I watched coverage of it on the Business News channel, seeing her stand at the podium presenting quarterly results while clearly unwell. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands gripped the podium edge too tightly. 2 weeks later, the thing we'd both feared happened. Victoria called me at 3 in the afternoon, her voice shaking. Robert knows about the pregnancy, about you. He hired a private investigator. How much does he know? Everything. Photos of us at the fertility clinic. Your background, your job, your income. He confronted me in my office an hour ago. Said the board won't accept a CEO who's pregnant by a blue-collar nobody. Said he's calling an emergency board meeting to vote me out. The fury that rose in my chest was white-hot and blinding. He can't do that. Pregnancy discrimination is illegal. He's not citing pregnancy. He's citing erratic behavior and poor judgment, making the pregnancy about my leadership capacity rather than my gender. It's a loophole and he knows it. When's the meeting? Friday. 3 days from now. Colt, I could lose everything. The company I built from nothing, everything I've worked for. Then we fight. You've faced worse than Robert Callahan. You've survived losing your whole family and rebuilding a life from ashes. Don't let him take what's yours. Friday morning, I woke at 5 a.m. too anxious to sleep. Victoria had asked me not to come to the board meeting, said my presence would make things worse. But all morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I should be there, that letting her face this alone was wrong. By noon, I'd made my decision. I called my boss, Tom, and told him I needed the afternoon off for a family emergency. Then I drove to Portland in my work uniform, not bothering to change. If the Next Gen Robotics Board was going to judge Victoria for choosing a working-class man, they could see exactly what that looked like. The corporate headquarters occupied a gleaming tower in downtown Portland, all glass and steel and architectural significance. I signed in at security, claiming I had business with Ms. Sinclair. They made calls, checked lists, finally waved me through with suspicious looks at my Patterson's Appliance Repair shirt. The boardroom was on the 15th floor. I could hear raised voices through the heavy wooden doors. A receptionist tried to stop me, but I pushed past it, opening the doors to a room full of men in expensive suits. Turning to stare, Victoria stood at the head of a long conference table, her hand resting protectively on a small baby bump that was just beginning to show. Shock flashed across her face when she saw me. Colt, what are you doing here, Robert? Callahan sat halfway down the table looking smug. Security, we have an intruder. I'm not an intruder. I'm Colt Brennan. The appliance repairman, Mr. Callahan, has been disparaging. I figure if this meeting is about me, I should be here. The board chairman, an older man with silver hair and reading glasses, looked between me and Robert with confusion. Madam, Callahan, is this the man you referenced in your presentation? That's him, high school diploma. $31,000 a year, single father living in a rental. Hardly the kind of person our CEO should be associated with, let alone creating a child with. I walked to the front of the room, standing beside Victoria. She looked at me with something that might have been gratitude or terror, I couldn't tell which. I understand your concerns. I'm not a tech billionaire or an Ivy League graduate. I fix air conditioners and refrigerators. I make $15 an hour, and I live in a house with peeling paint. But I have dignity. I work hard without complaining. I raise my daughter to understand that character matters more than bank accounts. Victoria chose me because she wanted those qualities in her child's DNA. If you think that's poor judgment, then you don't understand what makes a person valuable. Victoria found her voice then stronger than before. Gentlemen, yes, I'm pregnant. Yes, the father is Colt Brennan, an appliance technician. And yes, it's an unconventional arrangement. But let me be absolutely clear about something. She stood straighter, her CEO authority settling over her like armor. Colt is the best man I know. He's been a single parent for 5 years, working 2 jobs, never missing a day. He has integrity in a world where many people have forgotten what that word means. I chose him deliberately carefully because I wanted my child to inherit those qualities. If this board thinks that's poor judgment, fine. Vote me out. But don't insult me by suggesting that a person's worth is measured only by their income bracket. That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes companies fail because they value appearances over substance. Robert stood his face red. This is exactly the emotional decision-making that proves you're unfit to lead. You're letting personal desires cloud your business judgment. My personal life has never affected my performance. Our stock is up 40% since I took over as CEO. We've revolutionized medical robotics. Our products save lives every single day. That's what matters, not who I'm having a child with. The board members were murmuring among themselves. The chairman called for order, then called for a vote, all in favor of removing Mrs. Sinclair as CEO. 3 hands rose. Roberts and 2 others men I recognized from previous visits to the mansion, Roberts' known allies. All opposed. 12 hands rose. The relief on Victoria's face was palpable. The motion fails. Mrs. Sinclair retains her position as CEO. Mr. Callahan, we'll be reviewing your conduct and calling this meeting. Dismissed. Robert stormed out, his face purple with rage. The other board members filed out more slowly, several stopping to shake Victoria's hand and offer quiet congratulations on the pregnancy. When we were alone, Victoria turned to me with tears streaming down her face. You didn't have to do that, coming here speaking up. You didn't have to put yourself out there like that. Yes, I did, because you're not alone in this anymore. You're not facing everything by yourself. That's what together means. She kissed me then. Not a long kiss, not passionate, just a brief press of her lips against mine that felt like gratitude and something deeper I wasn't ready to name. Thank you for everything, for being brave when I needed someone to be brave with me. The weeks that followed were calmer. Victoria worked from home more often, delegating responsibilities she'd previously hoarded. I visited Portland twice a week after work, checking on her, making sure she was eating enough and resting properly. Ruby came with me, sometimes gradually warming to the idea of Victoria as a fixture in our lives. At week 18, we learned the baby's gender. Dr. Kim smiled at the ultrasound screen. It's a girl. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. A girl. Emma was a girl. Now this baby is a girl. It feels like coming full circle. This is a different child, her own person with her own life. I squeezed Victoria's hand. You know that, right? She's not Emma. I know. I do know. But maybe having another daughter means I get to honor Emma's memory while still moving forward. Maybe both things can be true. We chose the name together. Isabella Grace Sinclair. Isabella after Victoria's grandmother, who'd helped raise her. Grace after my mother, who died too young. Sinclair because Victoria wanted the baby to carry her late husband's name, a connection to the family she'd lost. The baby kicked for the first time at week 20. Victoria called me immediately, her voice breathless with wonder. She's moving. I can feel her. Colt, I can feel our daughter. Our daughter. The words hit me differently than they had before. This wasn't just Victoria's baby I was helping create. This was my daughter too. My second child, connected to me by biology and choice, and growing affection I hadn't expected. At week 24, Victoria asked me to go baby shopping with her. We drove to a high-end boutique in downtown Portland, the kind of place where everything cost more than my monthly rent. A crib caught Victoria's eye, all hand-carved Italian wood and elegant design. The price tag read $2,400. That's beautiful. My voice came out strangled. For a crib, Italian craftsmanship, the best materials, nothing but the best for Isabella. I raised Ruby with a $150 crib from IKEA. She survived just fine. The saleswoman gave me a condescending smile. Sir, these are investment pieces. Quality that lasts generations. Victoria touched my arm, reading the tension in my shoulders. Let's keep looking. We'll find something we both like. We compromised on a $600 crib, nice but not ostentatious. Walking through the store, though, the gulf between our worlds felt overwhelming. Victoria could drop thousands without thinking. I had to budget for every grocery trip. How were we going to navigate raising a child across that divide? At week 28, everything went wrong. I was at a repair job in Eugene when Victoria's assistant called. Ms. Sinclair is being transported to OHSU hospital. Contractions and bleeding. She asked me to call you. The wrench fell from my hand, clattering on the concrete floor. Is she okay? Is the baby okay? I don't know. The ambulance just left. She gave me your number before they loaded her. I was in my truck and driving before I'd fully processed what I was doing. 90 miles to Portland, pushing the speed limit, praying to gods I didn't believe in that both of them would be all right. 28 weeks was too early. Babies born that premature face serious complications. Lung problems, infections, developmental delays. The hospital parking garage was a maze. I ran through corridors following signs to labor and delivery, finally finding Victoria in a bed surrounded by monitors and medical equipment. Her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks, one hand on her belly. Colt. Thank God. Something's wrong. I'm bleeding and the contractions won't stop. They say the placenta might be separating. If it fully detaches, they'll have to do an emergency C-section. But Isabella's so small, her lungs aren't developed enough, she might not survive. I grabbed her hand, cutting off the spiral of panic. Breathe. The doctors know what they're doing. We focus on right now, this moment. Everything else we handle as it comes. Dr. Kim arrived 20 minutes later, all business. We're giving you steroid shots to mature Isabella's lungs faster. Magnesium sulfate to stop the contractions. The next 48 hours are critical. If we can't stop the labor, the baby will need to be delivered and spend time in the NICU. How bad would that be? 28 weeks challenging but survivable. We have excellent NICU facilities here, but obviously we'd prefer to keep her inside longer. I called Harper and asked her to pick up Ruby from school, explained I'd be staying in Portland overnight. Victoria wouldn't let go of my hand, her grip tightening with each contraction. The medication slowly began to work. The contractions eased from every 5 minutes to every 10, then every 20. You should go home. You have work tomorrow. Ruby needs you. Victoria's voice was exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. I'm exactly where I need to be. Work can wait. Harper has Ruby. I'm not leaving you alone to face this. Something passed across Victoria's face, then an emotion I couldn't quite read. Thank you for staying, for being here. Most people in my life, they're there for what I can do for them. You're here because you actually care. Of course I care. We're in this together, remember? By day 3, the crisis had passed. The bleeding stopped, the contractions ceased. Dr. Kim prescribed strict bed rest until week 37. No work, no stress, minimal activity. Victoria protested immediately. I can't abandon my company for 9 weeks. The board will use this against me. Robert will claim I'm unreliable. Robert can handle day-to-day operations. You supervise remotely from bed. Victoria, you have to choose. The company or your daughter. Which matters more? Her face crumpled. Both. They both matter. The company is everything I built after losing James and Emma. It's my proof that I survived. And Isabella is your proof that you get to live again, not just survive. Don't sacrifice her for a corporate title. She agreed finally, reluctantly. I helped her move into the mansion's master bedroom with her laptop and phone, everything she needed within arm's reach. She looked small in that enormous bed surrounded by pillows and monitors and the machinery of high-risk pregnancy. I started visiting 3 times a week after work, bringing Ruby sometimes. We'd watch movies together, Victoria propped up on pillows while Ruby sat beside her, chattering about school. Seeing them together did something to my chest, made me imagine futures I hadn't let myself consider. At week 30, after Ruby had gone to bed in one of the mansion's many guest rooms, Victoria and I sat in her bedroom with a movie neither of us was really watching. The silence between us felt comfortable in a way it hadn't before. Can I ask you something? Victoria's voice was soft, uncertain. Why did you really say yes back in October when I showed up at your door? Honestly, at first it was pity and guilt. You looked so broken and I felt terrible saying no. But then I realized it was my chance to take a risk, to prove to myself I wasn't a coward. And a chance to really know you, not just as the CEO who wrote my checks, but as a person. Do you regret it, any part of it, every day? Victoria's face fell and I rushed to clarify. I regret that I almost said no, that I wasted even a day considering refusing. But doing this, being here with you, no regrets at all. I need to tell you something. Her hand moved to her belly, protective and nervous. When I chose you, it wasn't just because you're a good father. I don't understand. I was attracted to you. From that first repair call, the way you worked focused, incompetent, and completely unimpressed by the wealth. The way you talked to me like I was a person instead of a bank account. I noticed you as a man Colt, not just as a potential father. My heart started hammering. So this wasn't just about the baby was real. I do desperately want to be a mother again. But part of why I chose you specifically was because I wanted a connection with you. I wanted an excuse to have you in my life. The air between us felt electric. I can't say that surprises me, because I've been attracted to you too, for months now. But we have an agreement. We're co-parents, not a couple. Getting romantic would complicate everything. Everything's already complicated. Victoria sat up, carefully mindful of the bed rest restrictions. We created a life together. We hold hands at ultrasounds. You stayed with me through a medical emergency. At what point do we stop pretending this is just a transactional arrangement I stood needing to pace? I'm terrified. You're a CEO worth hundreds of millions. I fix appliances for $15 an hour. We live in different worlds. What kind of future could we possibly have? The future we build together. Victoria's eyes held mine. Stop measuring worth in bank accounts. You're the one who told me character matters more than money. Do you believe that or not? I believe it. But society doesn't. Your board, your investors, your social circle, they'll never accept me as anything more than the help who got lucky. Then they can judge. I've spent 6 years living according to what other people expect. I'm done with that. I want to live according to what I want, and I want you. The words hung between us, terrifying and exhilarating. I crossed back to the bed and kissed her properly this time. Not grateful or brief, but deep and real tasting. Like possibility and risk and everything I'd been too afraid to reach for. When we pulled apart, both of us were crying. This is insane. We're idiots for letting this get complicated. Victoria laughed through her tears. Completely insane. Absolutely idiots. I don't care even a little bit. At week 37, Dr. Kim cleared Victoria for normal delivery. The labor started at 3 in the morning, Victoria's water breaking all at once and soaking the sheets. I drove her to the hospital through empty streets, her hand crushing mine through each contraction. Labor lasted 14 hours. I stayed the entire time coaching her through breathing, bringing ice chips, wiping sweat from her forehead. Nurses assumed I was her husband, and I didn't correct them. Somewhere during those hours, the distinctions stopped mattering. Isabella Grace Sinclair arrived at 5:47 p.m., 6 pounds, 8 ounces of screaming, red-faced fury. The nurses placed her on Victoria's chest, and we both broke down completely. Crying and laughing and overwhelmed by the reality of this tiny person we'd created. She's here. She's real. Victoria couldn't stop touching the baby's face, her hands counting fingers and toes. Colt, look at her. Look at what we made, the nurse turned to me. Dad want to cut the cord. I froze. We're not, Victoria interrupted, her voice firm. Yes, he is. He's her father. Colt cut the cord. I did the surgical scissors, slicing through the thick, rubbery tissue that had connected Isabella to Victoria for 9 months. Symbolic, cutting that connection and making her a separate person who would need both of us in different ways. They took Isabella for initial tests and measurements. Victoria lay back exhausted, her face sheened with sweat and glowing with happiness. Thank you for all of it, for saying yes when I asked the impossible, for staying when it got hard, for being exactly who I needed you to be. I kissed her forehead, then her lips. We did it together. That was always the only way this could work. Ruby met her baby sister the next day. Harper bringing her to the hospital with a stuffed bunny she'd picked out specially. She approached the bassinet with wide eyes looking down at Isabella with wonder. She's so tiny. All babies are tiny at first. You were this small once, too. Ruby reached out carefully, touching Isabella's hand. The baby's fingers curled reflexively around Ruby's thumb, and my daughter's face transformed. She's holding my hand. She knows I'm her sister. Of course she does. You're her big sister. That's the most important person in her world. Victoria watched from the hospital bed, tears sliding down her face. I knew without asking that she was thinking about Emma, about the sister Isabella would never know, but also about the family we were building, complicated and unconventional, but real. We brought Isabella home a week later, not to the mansion, but to a new house Victoria had purchased in Lake Oswego, halfway between Eugene and Portland. 4 bedrooms, nice but not ostentatious, with a yard for Ruby and a nursery for Isabella. Moving in together felt natural and terrifying. Boxes everywhere, furniture being delivered, Ruby claiming her room while Isabella slept through the chaos. Victoria directing movers while trying to figure out how to work the regular-size washing machine after years of having staff handle laundry. That first night, all 4 of us in one house felt like stepping into a future I'd barely let myself imagine. Ruby asleep upstairs, Isabella in her bassinet by our bed, Victoria beside me, her head on my shoulder, both of us too exhausted to do anything but exist together in the quiet dark. I started as a sperm donor. Somewhere along the way, I became a father again. And somewhere between board meetings and ultrasounds and crisis hospital visits, I fell completely in love. Now holding my daughter's mother, while our baby breathes softly nearby, I understand something fundamental. This is what it means to truly live instead of just survive. Isabella's first month home tested every assumption I'd made about my capacity to function on minimal sleep. The Lake Oswego house became a blur of diaper changes and midnight feedings and the particular exhaustion that comes from caring for a newborn who refuses to understand the concept of circadian rhythms. Victoria handled it better than I'd expected, moving through the sleep deprivation with the same grim determination she brought to board meetings. But I was splitting myself between 2 daughters in 2 cities, trying to maintain some version of the life Ruby had known, while building this new reality with Victoria and Isabella. Monday through Friday, I worked my appliance repair route in Eugene, picking Ruby up from school and making sure she had dinner and homework help and the stability she needed. 3 evenings a week, I'd drive 90 minutes to Lake Oswego after putting Ruby to bed, arriving at the new house past 9 p.m. to spell Victoria for a few hours before collapsing into exhausted sleep. Weekends, I brought Ruby with me, all of us together in the house that didn't quite feel like home to anyone yet. The math didn't work. I was averaging 4 hours of sleep a night, running on coffee and adrenaline, and the stubborn refusal to admit I couldn't handle it. My boss, Tom, noticed first, pulling me aside after I nearly wired a dishwasher backwards for the 2nd time in a week. "Wade, you're a disaster. When's the last time you slept a full night?" "I'm fine, just adjusting to the new schedule." "Bullshit. You're going to hurt yourself or someone else. Take a few days off. Figure your life out." "I can't afford time off." The words came out sharper than intended. "Rent's due, truck needs new brakes. Ruby needs school supplies. I work or we don't eat." Tom shook his head, frustrated but not unkind. "Then you need to make some hard choices about what's sustainable." This isn't that Saturday, 4 weeks after Isabella's birth, the choices got made for me. I was at Ruby's school for a parent-teacher conference, walking down the hallway toward her classroom, when the world suddenly tilted sideways. The fluorescent lights overhead went supernova bright and then dimmed my vision, tunneling to a pinpoint. My knees buckled. I grabbed for the doorframe, but my hand didn't connect with anything solid. The floor rushed up to meet me, and everything went black. I woke in the school nurse's office with a paramedic shining a light in my eyes and asking me what year it was. Ruby stood in the corner, crying, her teacher's hand on her shoulder. The fear on my daughter's face cut deeper than any physical pain. "Mr. Brennan, when did you last eat a full meal?" The paramedic checked my blood pressure, frowning at the numbers. "When did you last sleep more than a few hours?" "I'm fine. Just stood up too fast. You passed out from exhaustion and dehydration. Your vitals are a mess. We need to transport you to the hospital for evaluation." "No hospital. I can't afford it." I tried to sit up and the room spun viciously. "Ruby, I'm okay, sweetheart. Don't cry." But she was crying harder now, that particular kind of child sobbing that comes from seeing a parent vulnerable. The teacher called someone, and I realized with creeping horror that it was Harper, that my sister was going to drive 2.5 hours because I'd collapsed at my daughter's school like some kind of disaster. The ER doctor was young and unsympathetic. Diagnosis: severe exhaustion, dehydration, borderline malnutrition. You're running yourself into the ground. How many hours a week are you working? 50 at the repair shop, 10 to 15 at the warehouse on weekends, plus parenting 2 kids in 2 different cities 90 miles apart. That's not sustainable. You keep this up, next time you collapse, it might be behind the wheel with your daughter in the car. Then what Harper arrived as they were discharging me with instructions to rest and eat and stop trying to be superhuman. She took one look at me and her expression went from worried to furious. Her voice stayed low and controlled, but I heard the anger underneath. What the hell are you doing to yourself, taking care of my family? Both of them. By destroying yourself, that's your plan. Ruby, watching her father collapse, terrified. You're dying like her grandparents did. The words hit like a physical blow. Ruby had been 6 when Harper told her how our parents died a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The fear of losing me the same way was already her deepest nightmare. Harper drove Ruby back to Seattle for the weekend while I went to Lake Oswego. Victoria took one look at me shuffling through the door, and her face went pale. Colt, my God. What happened? And I gave her the abbreviated version. Collapsed at school, ER, visit, doctor's orders to rest. Her hands shook as she pulled me to the couch, her CEO efficiency replaced by something raw and scared. You can't keep doing this. Splitting yourself between 2 houses, 2 cities. Working yourself to death, trying to be everything to everyone. Something has to change, I know. The admission felt like defeat. I just don't know what. Victoria sat beside me, Isabella asleep in her arms. We need to talk. Really talk about what our life looks like going forward. Over the next few hours, we mapped it out. The current arrangement was killing me slowly, and Ruby was suffering from my constant exhaustion and distraction. Isabella needed more than a part-time father who showed up 3 nights a week, half dead from the commute. I think we should all live together. Victoria's voice was tentative, testing the idea. You, Ruby, me, Isabella. One house, one family. Ruby would have to change schools, leave her friends, the life she knows. She's already struggling with the current setup. You're never fully present because you're always exhausted or thinking about the other house. Maybe consistency in one place would be better than this constant splitting. And what about my job? Eugene's too far to commute daily from Lake Oswego. Victoria hesitated. Then I've been thinking about that. NextGen needs someone to oversee our facilities operations. Building maintenance, HVAC systems infrastructure. It's essentially what you do now, but at scale, managing contractors instead of doing the repairs yourself. The position pays $90,000 a year with full benefits. I stared at her. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a role you're qualified for. You've been managing complex mechanical systems for years. This just applies that expertise to corporate facilities, but only if you want it. If the idea of working for my company makes you uncomfortable, we'll figure something else out. The pride that rose in my throat was complicated. Part of me wanted to refuse on principle, to insist I didn't need handouts. But the practical side, the father who just collapsed from exhaustion, knew I had to consider it seriously. Let me think about it. Talk to Ruby about moving. Make sure this is really what's best for everyone. That conversation with my daughter happened Sunday evening after Harper brought her back from Seattle. We sat on the couch in the Eugene house, the one we'd lived in for 3 years, and I explained the situation as honestly as I could. Bug, we need to make some changes. The way we're living now, with me driving back and forth all the time, it's not working. I'm too tired and you're not getting enough of my attention. Are we moving? Her voice was small, scared. Maybe. To the house in Lake Oswego with Victoria and Isabella. We'd all live together as one family. Ruby's face cycled through emotions too complex for an 8-year-old. But that's not my house. My friends are here. My school is here. I know. And changing all that is really hard. But staying here means I keep running myself into the ground, trying to be in 2 places at once. Eventually, I'm going to get hurt worse or hurt someone else. I need you to help me figure out what's right. She was quiet for a long time, picking at a loose thread on the couch cushion. Will you be less tired if we all live together, Nya? I'd be home every night, not spending 3 hours a day driving. I could help with homework, make you breakfast, be actually present instead of just physically there. Would I have to change schools? Probably. Lake Oswego has good schools, but yeah, you'd be starting over with new friends. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to leave Hannah and Mia. They're my best friends. I know, sweetheart. I pulled her close, feeling her shake with quiet crying. This isn't fair to you. None of this is fair, but sometimes we have to choose between hard options and try to pick the one that's least bad. Do you love Miss Tori? Like girlfriend? Boyfriend love. The question caught me off guard. Yeah, Bug. I do, and you love Isabella. Of course. She's my daughter, your sister. Ruby pulled back to look at me, her face blotchy from crying, but her expression surprisingly mature. Then we should all be together. That's what families do, even if it's hard. 2 weeks later, we moved. Ruby cried, packing up her room, carefully wrapping her favorite stuffed animals in books and newspaper. I hired movers for the furniture and spent a weekend shuttling boxes between cities, each trip feeling like I was dismantling one life to build another. The Lake Oswego house slowly transformed into something that felt less like Victoria's space and more like ours. Ruby's room filled with her personality posters and art projects covering the neutral, beige walls. Isabella's nursery stayed calm and organized, Victoria's need for control manifesting in perfectly arranged changing stations and color-coded onesies. Our bedroom became a chaotic mix of my thrift store sensibilities and Victoria's high-end tastes somehow working despite the clash. Ruby's transition to her new school was brutal. She came home the first week in tears, more days than not. The other kids already had established friend groups, and she was the awkward new girl who didn't know anyone. The curriculum was different, more advanced, and she struggled to catch up. I found her crying in her room one evening, homework scattered across her desk. Everyone here is smarter than me. I can't do the math they're doing. I'm going to fail. You're not going to fail. We'll get you a tutor if needed. You're smart, Bug. You just need time to adjust. I miss my old school. I miss Hannah. I miss our old house. I know. Change is hard even when it's necessary. She looked at me with accusing eyes. This was your choice. You chose to move us here for your new family. The words landed like punches. Ruby, you are my family. My first family, my most important family. Nothing about that has changed. It feels like it changed. You spend all your time with Isabella and Victoria. I'm just the kid from before who you have to take care of. Her pain was real and valid, and I had no easy answers. All I could do was pull her into a hug and promise the same things I'd been promising for months. You come first. Always. I love you more than anything in this world. But promises weren't enough when she felt like her entire life had been upended for a baby she hadn't asked for. Victoria noticed the tension and tried to help, offering to take Ruby shopping for school clothes or out for ice cream one-on-one time to build their relationship. Ruby accepted reluctantly, treating these outings like obligations rather than opportunities. After one particularly strained afternoon, Victoria came back looking exhausted. She's polite but distant. Every time I try to connect, she gives me one-word answers and stares at her phone. She's grieving her old life. Give her time. What if time isn't enough? What if she never accepts this? Then we keep showing up anyway. Keep being consistent and patient and present. That's all we can do. My new job at NextGen started the following Monday. The facilities management office was in the same downtown Portland tower where I'd crashed the board meeting, but this time I had a badge and a desk and business cards that read, Colt Brennan, Director of Facilities Operations. The title felt absurd. 3 months ago, I'd been fixing refrigerators for $15 an hour. Now I was overseeing a department of 23 people and a $7 million annual budget. The other directors treated me with careful politeness that didn't quite hide their skepticism. The CEO's boyfriend getting a cushy position reeked of nepotism, and everyone knew it. I had to prove myself worthy of the role every single day. Robert Callahan made that harder than it needed to be. He'd lost the board vote to remove Victoria, but kept his CFO position, and he used every opportunity to undermine her authority through bureaucratic warfare. Budget requests delayed important information, withheld strategic decisions questioned at every turn. 6 weeks into my new role, I started noticing irregularities in the facility's budget. Contractors billing for work that hadn't been completed. Purchase orders for equipment that never arrived. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger immediate red flags, but consistent enough to form a pattern. I brought it to Victoria one evening after the girls were asleep. Someone skimming from the facility's budget. Maybe 50,000 over the past year, hidden in contractor payments and equipment purchases. Her face went hard. Do you have proof enough to be suspicious? Not enough to go to the board yet. Keep digging. Quietly. If Robert's involved, and I'd bet money he is, we need ironclad evidence before we move. Over the next month, I built the case methodically, tracing payments to shell companies, finding contracts for services never rendered, uncovering a pattern of theft that went back 3 years and totaled at close to $2 million. The money had been siphoned, carefully disguised in legitimate-looking invoices and purchase orders that wouldn't stand up to detailed scrutiny. The evidence pointed directly to Robert, his signature on approval forms, his access codes used to authorize payments, email trails showing him coordinating with fake vendors who were probably just accounts he controlled. Victoria called an emergency board meeting for the following Friday, the same conference room where Robert had tried to remove her, now the venue for his downfall. She presented the evidence systematically. Financial records and emails projected on screens, while board members' faces went from confused to shocked to furious. Robert sat stone-faced through the presentation, his lawyer beside him, whispering urgently. When Victoria finished, the chairman looked at Robert with disgust. Mr. Callahan, do you have anything to say? This is fabricated. Colt Brennan manufactured this evidence because he wants my position. He's been gunning for me since he showed up. I stood opening my laptop. The financial forensics are available for independent audit. The shell companies can be traced. The email servers have logs that can't be altered. This isn't manufactured. This is $2 million you stole from the company over 3 years. One of the board members, a woman named Patricia, who'd voted against Robert's coup, leaned forward. We'll be contacting federal authorities. This is embezzlement and wire fraud at minimum. Robert's facade cracked then. His face went red, veins standing out on his forehead. You self-righteous hypocrites. Victoria gets pregnant by the help, and you celebrate it. I take what I'm owed for building this company, and you call the FBI. You didn't build this company. Victoria's voice was ice. You worked for it. There's a difference. And you weren't owed $2 million from our facilities budget. Security escorted Robert from the building. The board voted unanimously to terminate him and file criminal charges. As he was led past me in the hallway, he stopped long enough to snarl, "You think you won? You'll always be the blue-collar nobody who got lucky. Everyone here knows it. Maybe. But I'm the blue-collar nobody who caught you stealing. So I'll take that as a win." The satisfaction lasted exactly as long as it took to get home and find Ruby sitting at the kitchen table with a letter from her school. She pushed it toward me without speaking, her face a mask of misery. The letter detailed an incident in PE class where Ruby had shoved another student who'd made a comment about her family. The girl had fallen and sprained her wrist. Ruby was suspended for 3 days and required to attend counseling sessions. What did she say? What comment? Ruby's voice came out small and ashamed. She said my family was weird, that my dad was only with Victoria for her money, that Isabella was a mistake baby. Oh, bug. I pulled her into my lap even though she was getting too big for it. None of that is true. None of it. But people think it. Even if it's not true, everyone thinks it. People who judge without knowing the whole story aren't worth listening to. You know our family is real. That's what matters. But she kept crying, and I realized with sinking dread that my daughter was paying the social price for our unconventional choices. That night, Victoria and I had the hardest conversation of our relationship. She sat on our bed while I paced, both of us exhausted and out of solutions. Maybe this was a mistake. Moving everyone together, trying to force a family dynamic that doesn't work naturally. Don't, Victoria's voice was sharp. Don't catastrophize one bad incident into proof this whole thing is wrong. It's not one incident. Ruby's struggling every day. She misses her friends, hates her new school, feels like she's been uprooted for a sister she didn't ask for. What's the alternative? You kill yourself commuting? We split the family back into 2 households. I don't know. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling trapped. I just know my daughter is suffering, and I put her in this position. She's adjusting. It takes time. Kids are resilient, are they? Or do we just tell ourselves that to feel better about the choices we make? Victoria stood crossing to where I'd stop at pacing. Look at me, her hands cupped my face. We made choices that were hard on Ruby. That's true. But they were also necessary. You were literally collapsing from exhaustion. This was the only sustainable path. That doesn't make her pain less real. No, but it means we support her through it instead of giving up. We get her counseling. We make time for just the two of you. We show her every single day that she matters. We don't abandon ship the second things get difficult. The counseling helped gradually. Daughter Amy Chen, the same therapist who'd helped Ruby adjust to the pregnancy news, worked with her on processing the changes and finding coping strategies. Ruby started opening up about feeling replaced, about being angry at me for choosing Victoria and Isabella over the life they'd had before. Your dad didn't choose them over you. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. He chose a life where he could be fully present instead of half dead from exhaustion. That choice benefits you too. It doesn't feel like it benefits me. Because change is hard even when it's ultimately good. Your brain is mourning your old life. That's normal. But it doesn't mean the new life is wrong. Slowly in increments too small to track day to day, Ruby began to settle. She made a friend at school, a girl named Zoe, who didn't care about family dynamics and just wanted someone to trade Pokemon cards with. Her grades improved as she caught up on the curriculum. The crying at bedtime became less frequent, and somewhere in the adjustment, she started bonding with Isabella in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd find her reading to the baby in a sing-song voice, making up elaborate stories about princesses and dragons. She'd help with bath time, carefully pouring water over Isabella's head, while the baby squealed with delight. One evening, I caught her having a one-sided conversation with Isabella in the nursery. "You're pretty lucky, you know. You get daddy and mom both all the time. I had to share him for a while, but now I guess we all share. It's okay, though. You're kind of cute. For a baby." She noticed me in the doorway and flushed. I was just keeping her company while mom makes dinner. "I know. You're a good big sister." Her smile was tentative but real. "Yeah, I guess I am." That winter, I started working on a personal project in the garage. I'd found my mother's old toolkit in storage, the one Harper had saved after our parents died. Tools I learned to use under Grace Brennan's patient instruction back when I'd been a kid who wanted to understand how things worked. Ruby found me one Saturday afternoon stripping wire for a new light fixture I was installing. "What are you doing?" "Replacing the garage lighting. The current setup is terrible. Can I help?" I handed her a pair of wire strippers, showing her how to measure and cut. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, just the rhythm of the work and the satisfaction of building something useful with our hands. This was Grandma Grace's toolkit, wasn't it? Yeah. She taught me everything I know about fixing things. Ruby ran her fingers over the worn tool handles. "Do you miss her every day? She was the person who made me believe I could be good at something that mattered. Is that why you work with tools? Because of her, partly, but also because there's something honest about mechanical work. You can't lie to a broken motor. Either you fix it right or it doesn't run. There's clarity in that." Ruby considered this. "That's kind of how I feel about math. Either the answer is right or it's not. No ambiguity." We finished installing the light fixture as the sun set, testing it together and feeling the simple pride of accomplishment. Ruby looked up at the bright new light with satisfaction. "We did good work." "Yeah, Bug, we really did." Spring came with cherry blossoms and longer days, and Isabella's first birthday approaching. Victoria wanted to throw a party, something tasteful and elegant, befitting a Sinclair family celebration. I pushed back, wanting something smaller and more intimate. We compromised on a backyard gathering at the house. 20 people, mostly Victoria's colleagues from Next Gen, and a few of Ruby's friends from school. Harper drove down from Seattle with her husband. My boss, Tom, came with his wife, curious to see the life I'd built outside work. Isabella wore a pink dress and a ridiculous bow in her hair, Victoria's influence clear. She'd started walking a few weeks earlier and spent the party toddling between guests, her face split in a perpetual grin. Ruby hovered nearby, protective and proud, in a way that made my chest tight. Victoria stood beside me, watching our daughters, her hand finding mine naturally. A year ago, I was alone in a mansion, convinced I'd never be a mother again. Now look at this. Look at what we built. A year ago, I was falling asleep on my feet, trying to survive another day. Now I'm standing in our backyard watching our family celebrate. Funny how things change. She leaned into me, her voice soft enough that only I could hear. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. You gave me everything I thought I'd lost forever. The words still felt new enough to carry weight. I love you too. Both of you. All three of you, I corrected, pulling Ruby into the conversation with a gesture. This whole weird family we've cobbled together. Harper found me later while I was cleaning up discarded paper plates and plastic cups. You did it, little brother. Built yourself a real life. Doesn't feel real yet. Still feels like I'm going to wake up and find out this was all some exhaustion-induced hallucination. Trust me, it's real, and you've earned every bit of it. That night after the guests left and the girls were asleep, Victoria and I sat on the back deck with glasses of wine watching the moon rise over Lake Oswego. The house behind us glowed with warm light, evidence of the life we'd filled it with. I need to ask you something. I've been planning this for weeks, the question heavy in my pocket, and I'm terrified of your answer. Victoria turned to me, concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's actually kind of perfect in a chaotic, imperfect way, which is why I want to make it official. I pulled out the ring box, my mother's engagement ring inside. Simple gold band with a small diamond. Nothing that would impress a woman worth hundreds of millions, but everything to me because it represented my family's history. Victoria Sinclair, we did everything backwards. Had a baby before we were even dating. Built a family before we figured out if we loved each other. But I don't want to wait anymore to make this real. Will you marry me? Her hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming. The word came out choked and laughing and absolutely certain. Yes. God, yes, absolutely yes. I slipped the ring on her finger, this small circle of gold on the hand that had signed billion-dollar contracts and built an empire from ambition and grief. It looked right there, more right than any expensive jewelry could have. We planned the wedding for October, 2 years after she'd first knocked on my door asking the impossible. Small ceremony in Harper's Seattle backyard, 60 guests maximum. No press, no society, photographers, just the people who actually mattered to us. Ruby served as flower girl, carrying Isabella down the aisle. The baby kept trying to eat the flower petals, making guests laugh, as Ruby patiently redirected her sister's attention. Isabella, at 18 months, was all toddler chaos, squealing and waving at familiar faces. My vows came from weeks of writing and rewriting, trying to capture something true. 2 years ago, you showed up at my door, desperate and drowning. You asked for help creating life. What you gave me instead was a reason to actually live instead of just survive. I choose you. I choose this beautiful, chaotic family. I choose us every single day for the rest of my life. Victoria's vows were shorter, but no less powerful. You taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in Sunday morning pancakes and bedtime stories, and the way our daughters laugh. You showed me that strength comes from showing up even when you're terrified. That character matters more than credentials, and love grows instead of diminishing when you share it. I choose you, forever. We kissed while our daughters cheered Ruby, shouting finally loud enough to make everyone laugh. The reception was casual, potluck dishes and craft beer, and dancing in Harper's backyard while the sun set over Puget Sound. Tom cornered me at one point, beer in hand and genuine happiness on his face. Never thought I'd see the day Colt Brennan married a CEO. You did good, kid. I got lucky. Right time, right place, right? Desperate billionaire showing up at my door. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. You were ready when she needed you. That's not luck, that's character. 6 months after the wedding, I stood in front of a renovated warehouse in Eugene, watching the sign go up, Brennan Technical Academy. Victoria had purchased the building and funded the renovations, turning my vague dream of teaching skilled trades into physical reality. 20 students in the first cohort, kids from low-income families learning HVAC repair, electrical work, plumbing, automotive mechanics. I taught 2 classes a week while maintaining my role at Next Gen, driving down from Portland on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. One student, a 17-year-old named Marcus, whose single mother worked 3 jobs, reminded me painfully of myself at that age. Hungry to learn, desperate to build a future beyond minimum wage service work, treating every lesson like it might be the key to survival. After class one evening, he lingered ostensibly to clean tools, but really to ask the question I could see burning in him. Mr. Brennan, how did you do it? Go from repair work to running facilities for a robotics company. Hard work and ridiculous luck. I met someone who saw potential in me I didn't see in myself. But you married the CEO. That's not exactly a path most of us can follow. True, but the skills you're learning here, the work ethic, the ability to solve problems with your hands and your brain, that's yours regardless of who you marry or don't marry. That's what opens doors. Ruby came with me sometimes to the academy, helping organize tools and watching me teach with the same serious attention she brought to her own math homework. At 10 years old, she had developed an interest in engineering, telling anyone who'd listen that she wanted to design robots like the ones Mom's company built. The transition to calling Victoria Mom had happened gradually over the years since the wedding. No one pushed it, but one day Ruby just started using the word, and it stuck. Victoria cried the first time she heard it pulled Ruby into a fierce hug that said everything words couldn't. Isabella at 3 was talking in complete sentences, her personality, a perfect blend of Victoria's determination and my practicality. She followed Ruby everywhere, treating her big sister like a combination of hero and jungle gym. Ruby's patience with her was remarkable. The initial resentment transformed into genuine affection. 4 years after that rainy October night, when Victoria knocked on my door, we'd built something that looked nothing like the family I'd imagined, but felt more real than anything I could have planned. Christmas morning that year, all four of us around the tree in pajamas, Isabella tore through wrapping paper, more interested in the boxes than the toys. Ruby opened a professional toolkit, her face lighting up with the same joy I'd felt receiving my mother's tools. You're part of a lineage now, I told her. 3 generations of Brennans who know how to fix things. Victoria gave me a framed photo, professionally shot, but candid. All four of us in the backyard last summer mid-laugh at something Isabella had done. The joy on our faces was unguarded and real. This is us. Her voice was soft. This is the family we chose to build. Later that afternoon, we drove to a cemetery outside Seattle. Emma's grave was marked with a simple headstone, her name and dates, and a carved butterfly. Ryan Sinclair's stone stood beside it, the matching markers a reminder of the family Victoria had lost. Isabella held Victoria's hand, confused about why we were visiting stones in the cold. Ruby stood quietly beside me, understanding without needing explanation. Victoria knelt in the snow, placing flowers on both graves. Emma, Ryan, I want you to meet some people. This is Colt, who taught me it was okay to want to live again. These are our daughters, Ruby and Isabella. Your family grew. I hope that would make you happy. She cried quietly, and I held her, Ruby moving to her other side in silent support. Isabella sensed the mood and grew still, her little hand patting Victoria's arm in comfort. When we drove away, Victoria seemed lighter. Thank you for pushing me to come here. I needed to tell them about us, about the life I built after losing them. They'd want you to be happy. I think so too. I hope so. That evening we drove back to Lake Oswego, to the house that had become home. Ruby and Isabella fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the day. Victoria's hand rested in mine, her mother's ring catching the dashboard lights. What are you thinking about? Her voice was quiet, not wanting to wake the girls. How 4 years ago I was alone in a rental house, trying to figure out how to pay rent. How I'd convinced myself that survival was the best I could hope for. And now I have this. All of this. 2 amazing daughters, a wife I love, work that matters. A family that's real, even though it doesn't look like anyone's storybook version. She squeezed my hand. I was dying in a mansion full of money, convinced I'd used up my chance at happiness. Then I knocked on a stranger's door and asked for the impossible. I'm glad you did, even though it was crazy, even though I should have said no. But you didn't say no. You said yes, and you changed everything. For both of us. We pulled into our driveway as the first snow of winter began to fall. Through the windows, I could see the Christmas tree lights still glowing warm and welcoming. This house, these people, this complicated, beautiful life we'd built from desperation and courage. I started this journey as a repairman, trying to fix one broken woman's shattered dreams. I ended it understanding that some things can't be fixed, only rebuilt. That wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the people who need you and the lives you choose to build together. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say yes to something impossible and trust that love will show you how to make it work.